Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome back. This is Saturday morning. It is Multifamily Unplugged, and I am certainly glad that you're here today. Super excited about our guest, which I'll get to in a minute. But I'm Mike Morawski. I'm your bounce back coach, your multifamily investment strategist, cash flow expert, helping you learn, grow, and scale your portfolio. So whether you're brand new in the multifamily business or you've been in it for a while, you're in the right place. We're going to be able to help you. This morning, my guest, Alex Meierhoefer, he is calling in from Escondido, California, not too far from where I am. And we are going to talk, his company is Ideal Wealth Growth. And we're going to talk about proper corporate structures and how those work into your business. So I know you're going to want to grab your coffee this morning, grab a notepad, take some notes. We're going to cover some good information about corporate structure. And if you are new to the show or somebody invited you, told you about the show, thank them and let them know that you got something out of it. And please do us a favor. Remember, smash the subscribe button, like us, love us, and continue to follow us. We're always bringing great guests, great information, and knowledge that's going to help you build your business or go to the next level. So let me bring Alex in here real quick. Alex, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How is the weather? I'm sure it's a lot like where I'm up in Huntington Beach. So
it's no fog today, which is nice. So, we're oftentimes just far enough inland so that it's either gone by the time I get up or it's, staying off a little bit more towards like Carlsbad or Oceanside or stuff. So, no, it's all good right now.
Yeah, that's that marine layer,
Right. Yeah.
I usually, like this morning, the sun was coming up and my desk is right in front of the window, so I had the sun in my eyes. So obviously I face east, right? So,
yep.
Hey, Alec. I know that, I start my show all the time and I ask one key question of my guests, and I always like to know what people, where people's focus is and what they, how they grow and what they think about. But in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
One word. I hope I can say mastery.
Mastery.
Yes.
Love that. Love that. Who was it? Maxwell Gladwell that said, you master something after you spend 10,000 hours in it, right? And so what do you feel in your life that you have really mastered?
Well, in a sense, I always say I had two lives. The first time I would say I really mastered something was in aviation. I was in the Air Force, and it was kind of mandatory that you mastered flying the plane. There's really no other option. So for me, the mastery was exemplified by the fact that I was accepted in the flight test team, because that is doing stuff for and with the plane that hasn't been done before, because it's testing, obviously, right? So I would say that was in that case the mastery that I was involved in. And then now it's an ongoing process in helping people like you do develop passive income portfolios and get them on the path to retirement or ideally early retirement. And I'm the first to admit I'm learning every day. I love to be on shows or have guests on my own show, because I haven't really found, I wouldn't even claim that I have reached mastery, or maybe only in comparison to like how many hours, like you said. I've probably done 50,000 hours or more by now, but I have no delusion to think that I'm anywhere close to the end.
Yeah. Isn't it funny when you're really involved in your business and it's what you do every day, I don't know that I ever really considered getting to a mastery level, because I'm always learning. I'll have somebody like yourself on my show and I'll learn. I know this morning I'm going to learn a couple of things from you. And, we keep growing, right? I think education is such an important part in what we do in business and in life.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it has also a little to do with the mindset that you have, right? I mean, sadly, there are some people out there who think that they did some sort of a program or got some sort of a degree and that will carry them through life for the end of time or something like that. And I'm with you. I mean, the distinction that I made with the plane is you obviously have physical limits, right? And physical limits are either, in my case, for the aviator or for the plane itself, right? The plane is breaking apart if you mistreat it too much. And that's not very healthy in a three-dimensional space where you go 10 miles a minute, So that's one thing where you have these kind of physical limits. But in what you and I do now, I really don't see any of those physical limits. I actually look at it a little bit more lately with what do I need to learn as quickly as possible to stay up and stay at least on eye-to-eye level with all the technology that's emerging.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about you, your background, your history, and what what is Ideal Wealth doing for people today?
Right. So basically, I'm a big fan of trying to put things and concepts and stuff like that into digestible packages. And so when I started my first business, it was this consulting company. I came to the realization, no military pension, no corporate 401k plan or anything like that. I had to do something myself for retirement. Right. And so I looked into what could I do and discovered residential real estate investing. And initially, my whole intention was I run my consulting company, I invest in real estate, I build a portfolio, and at some point in the future, I can retire. And then people caught on to that and said, hey, should tell other people, allow other people, and so forth. And it became its own business. But if you allow me, I would love to tell your audience real quick what ideal and what grower in this context actually means. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so wealth is obviously the goal that we want to accomplish for our clients, and I, for myself, I'm hoping for that for you as well and anybody listening. So ideal stands for income, depreciation, equity, appreciation, and leverage. And when somebody comes to you or somebody is listening and saying, okay, what makes real estate investing different to buying a gold coin or buying a stock for a company or stuff like that, you can basically rattle down those things. Now, obviously, each of those letters and each of those words has a little bit more behind it. But I believe real estate is, in that sense, a very unique investment opportunity and asset class because it has all these aspects attached to it that you can actually benefit from. Now, the other thing is grower. When people come to us into our mentoring program, oftentimes they want to know, how do I have to imagine how this actually works in practice? And through my consulting work, I had gotten interested and studied it and got certified in coaching for business people. And one of the relatively famous concepts is the GROW model. That comes from a guy named James Whitmore, who wrote a book called Performance Coaching. And he developed the GROW model, and I looked at it, I practiced it for a while, I came to the conclusion for my mentoring, I want to expand it a little bit. So what does it mean? The G stands for what are your goals? And I always differentiate what's your big, hairy, audacious goal, and then the sub-goals that support it. Then what is your current reality? That's basically the R. What are your obstacles and opportunities that you have in this moment in the context of achieving your main goal and your sub-goals? And then what actions will you, this is a little bit of a stretch to make that the W, what actions will you take that get you one step closer to accomplishing these goals or getting to this goal? And that's typically where the GROW model ends. And I've always kind of cheekily, jokingly said, well, that's good for the first session, but what do we do when we meet again in 2 weeks? And so then what would I ask you, and that's the E, is what was the experience when you took the action that you said you would take? Right, let's say you say, I take the action to find out if I prefer Columbus, Ohio or Memphis, Tennessee as my first place where I want to build my first investing cluster. Right, so I would ask you in the second session and any subsequent session, how was that? What was the experience? And then obviously the R for grower is, what were the results of your actions? Have you made a decision? Which location is it? And then let's say we were to say we choose between Columbus, Ohio and Miami, Florida. One of the results could be I need a shitload more money if I want to invest in Miami. I can get away with way less if I do it in Columbus, which means for like residential real estate investing, I can get more properties for the same investment amount that I'm putting in. Okay, now if you get more properties quicker, what does that do to your goals? And that makes it cyclical. Right now we're looking at the goals again. Now how does what you last cycle did influence your current reality and so forth? So in this kind of cyclical way, we're working our way through for two main things. You mentioned it in the intro. One is to establish a corporate structure for you. And number two is starting both educating and but also practically finding your first investment property.
And do most of the people that you work with come to you that don't have any real estate and are just getting started in the business? Or do they come to you after the fact and they own a bunch of assets and they say, how do I structure this?
As funny as that may sound, I would say it's kind of like the good old Pareto principle. About 80% don't have real estate yet and 20% have or had some.
Okay.
And they feel they either made some mistakes or they always thought that they could only be within like reasonable driving distance from where they were living or something like that. So that's about the split, I would say.
Got it. I got it. So let's talk about corporate structure and let's kind of focus in on that. What does a good corporate structure look like for someone owning real estate today?
Well, the first thing I would say is I'm a big fan of separating anything that you do privately under your own name or your family's name and what you want to do in investing. So the first part is just to say, okay, I'm a big advocate to say, make your investing a business and form an LLC. So if you're in the United States, for most people, I recommend starting out with an S-Corporation LLC. You could also do what's called a C-Corporation, but there are benefits both in how much work it is, how much reporting requirements are there, and so forth. So I think for most US-based investors to start out with an S-Corporation. And I like the analogy to say this S-Corporation, this LLC, is your mothership, your mother organization.
And let me just ask this real quick if I can. We know we can create an LLC, and then there's these elections, right? C-Corp, S-Corp,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And are you doing that for structure or are you doing that for tax reporting purposes?
It's a little bit of both. There are obviously a whole bunch of different distinctions, but one of the big distinctions I would say is if you have an S corporation, it is called, also another name for it is called a pass-through entity. So what that means is if you build an LLC as an S corporation, and let's say you bought a property and you have depreciation, all the things that I mentioned earlier with Ideal. So in the first year, this S corporation lost $5,000. Let's just take that as an example. Pass-through means those $5,000 go on your normal personal 1040 tax return. And when you look at how much money did you make with your job and what any other income out of your real estate, or the real estate income would be minus 5,000. So if you made 50,000 adjustable gross income, you would literally say minus 5,000. And so now my adjusted gross income that I need to pay taxes on is 45,000. If you compare that to a C corporation, it's completely separate. So you have a company, the company files a tax return. If it makes a loss, then you can carry that loss forward to next year. Hopefully you make a profit and you can do that. But it's really encapsulated in and of itself, and you have your private return in and of itself, right? So that's one of the big differences, that a pass-through entity means you really have only one time to pay taxes, and that is at the end of the tax year when you have figured out does my company owe anything, or did my company have profit? You pass it through to your normal return, and that's it. And obviously the goal is that you can write off a whole bunch of things. I always say, unless you have a lot of money to invest in the first 5 years, the LLC is probably a tax benefit to you for depreciation and all kinds of other things. So it makes it, the other thing that makes it easier, you really, if you think about it, you're 100% owner, or if you're owner with your spouse, that's still considered 100% ownership. So once or twice a year, you have a meeting with yourself. You fill out like a 3-liner meeting report that your corporation met with itself, the managers met. You write it down, you're done. In a C corporation, you have way more requirements and what you have to do and what you have to report and so forth and so forth. So I always say not only is it a benefit that it's a pass-through, but it's also a benefit because it's much easier to handle.
Okay. So, I've always thought, you always hear that LLCs are good for protection
Yes.
against events that might happen at that real estate.
Right.
There's a domestic dispute, somebody gets hurt, they try to sue you, is that the case?
Yeah, it is. Although, remember I mentioned that the first LLC, that S corporation that you form, I call that the mother or the mothership.
Right.
Let's just say, okay, so you have established this mothership. And by the way, establishing it the way we do it only costs you about $300. And we typically nowadays do it in Wyoming because they have all kinds of protections. They have no reporting. Your name is not going to be revealed and all that kind of stuff. But let's now say we did this. We have our S corporation, and now you and I go out. We look into the market that you prefer, and we find our first investing property. There are two things that could happen, but from the structure perspective, initially what we would do is we would try to buy the property through our LLC. If that doesn't work, we buy it privately, but we will transfer title, and here comes the point, into a new LLC, no S, no C, no nothing, just an LLC that holds the title, and that is your first child. So you have the mother and your first child. You buy another property, second child, another property, third child. Now here's why do we do this? All your rents, all your mortgage payments, all your property management company, your insurance, blah, 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 all this stuff, the mother handles that. Or if you want to make it the daddy, then the daddy handles it, however you prefer. But all the operations, you remember when we started, I said that I call it the operations company or the mother. All the operations for your investing business run through that. And the beauty is that the IRS says, if you structure it in this way, you only need to do one tax return for that. All the children don't need to file anything.
Oh.
And the protection that you ask for is, let's say somebody pretends they got injured because they're tenants in your property and they claim that something is wrong with your property and it is your fault that they got injured. And let's just pretend, which is very unlikely, by the way, for the audience, but let's just pretend they would find a judge who says, yep, you're right. It is the fault of the owner of this house, which, by the way, keep in mind, the owner of this house is the LLC, the child number 3 LLC in our case. And the house was bought, let's say, for $200,000, and the judge says, oh man, that was such a bad thing. $1 million to the plaintiff. Okay, so now you have an award of $1 million. What do? You go and say, okay, mortgage company, so sorry, I have to sell the house. You pay off the mortgage, then there are about $3.50 left. That's what the person that sued you got. And your mother and all your other children are still there operating as if nothing happened. So that's the protective part of, and this thing, if anybody is wondering, what is this called? Can I look this up? Can I go on like Google or can I go on like ChatGPT? It's called a Series LLC structure. And not every state in the country allows that, but like Nevada, Wyoming are kind of two of the, what I would say, preferred states that allow this kind of Series LLC structure. So the title is held by like your children, and the mother does all the operations. And if one of the children misbehaves according to the judicial system, well, it has to go to jail or maybe even leave the family, but the rest is all good to go.
So, I know a number of years ago when Series LLCs first started, there were a lot of attorneys that kind of looked the other way on those. They didn't feel that they were beneficial because there was no case law on any events. And has that changed now over the years?
Well, it's an interesting aspect to consider. One thing that has happened is if you take this example of somebody wants to sue, right, because something happened in this one house and the tenant feels they got harmed or whatever. And that tenant, when they go nowadays in a real case to an attorney, and the first thing the attorney says, okay, tell me the address, I need to find out who owns it. Right. The first thing that happens is it's not so easy because it's not Johnny Miller. It's like, okay, there is a company, and then they dig a little deeper and they find, oh, that company is owned by another company. And what we sometimes do, and I know this puts another little wrinkle in it for your audience, if you cannot get financing for your investment through your LLC, then you can still get financing just on your good name, on your credit score, on your normal regular work income. So now you have a mortgage for this house, but the mortgage is on you and not on the LLC. Well, what you can do is you can put the mortgage and the title in a land trust and let that land trust be owned by the LLC. Now we go back to the lawyer. The lawyer looks and says, okay, I find there's one LLC, then there is another LLC somehow related, but that is also not the owner. There is another trust that seems to be maybe the owner. And then they look and they try to figure this all out in Wyoming. And Wyoming has no reporting law, so you can't even figure out who is actually the owner in name. You can only find the name of the entities. At that point, at the latest, typically the lawyer says, hey, dear Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, by the time I figured out how this is all together, and this is such a thing that, and you appear obviously as a much larger organization than you really are, they're probably going to tell you, okay, what is your damage? $25,000, $30,000. That's about the fees that I need to have to actually take this thing to court. So you're not going to make any money. So this is a very long-winded way to say, no, there isn't that much more case law now, because most of the time when lawyers look into it, they find out, oh no, this is it's like sticking your hand in a snake basket, right? Like you don't really want to do it. But on the other hand, what is important is not so much the case law, because we're not doing investing to get sued or something like that. What is, in my opinion, more important is that this structure has been proven to be correct, has been tested over and over again with the IRS, which I personally believe. I mean, I have my portfolio now with 10 individual properties in 10 individual LLCs for 15 years, and I haven't even seen a letter where somebody tried to sue me. Now, that might be because all the lawyers refused, but the fundamental fact is, and I know a lot of people who have very large portfolios, it's not that everybody gets sued all the time, even though we live in a very litigious environment and society. So I think it is almost more important to make sure that if you have a structure and your child number 3 LLC has never filed a tax return, that nobody at the IRS is going to say you did something wrong.
Yeah. All right. So let's say this. So now we've created this parent LLC, and then we have the first real estate that we buy and put in another LLC.
Right.
And what are the next steps corporately for structure?
Right. So what you want to do is in your operating agreement or articles of operation, it depends a little bit how you're doing it, you can name so-called beneficiaries. It's a similar thing like if you were to make a will for yourself, right? Or you have a family trust, you want to obviously identify who are the beneficiaries. So child number 1 LLC in their documents, in their company documents, would say the beneficiary of this LLC is the mother. Right? And child number 2, child number 3, so they would all say the beneficiary is the mother, and therefore that's also why you can legally roll everything up to like just one that has to file taxes and has all the operations, and the other ones only hold title, either directly or through the title.
There's definitely some simplicity in that model.
Yeah, exactly. And if you get bigger and bigger, Then you also want for the structure, since you asked me what is the structure, this is kind of the starting structure, mother first, child 1, 2, 3. But there comes a point when you look at it and say, okay, well, so how much is my overall asset value? And it's not just the properties, the real estate could be other stuff too. You may have your own residence, you may have bought art or gold or Bitcoin or whatever. So your asset value overall might warrant that you say, okay, I should do something for the case that, you know, I get with my spouse run over by a bus or falling out of the sky, or I don't know, some pandemic comes along or what have you. So when you get to a certain size, and it's a little bit of a personal decision where you think that certain size is, I always feel like when you're getting like 2, 3, 5 million in asset value, that's when you start doing something called estate planning, which typically involves to create a trust or a holding as part of your structure, where you can then say, okay, the trust or the holding is basically the beneficiary of all these entities, that whole family of mother and children. And it clarifies what should happen in the case that the normal thing, you know, that you just hand it over to your children when you want to retire, when that doesn't happen, when there's some sudden calamity happening. Because if you turn it into a trust, you want to say, okay, should the people that actually run the trust be allowed to sell the properties? Should they sell it to charity? What should happen with the money? All those kind of things, right? When you're operating your structure, your series structure, it's all fine. You're basically in charge together, maybe with your spouse. But for that case that there's a multi-million-dollar portfolio, you don't want to have a situation where the courts decide what happens. That's called probate. So you don't want to have a probate court decide. That's why you want to have a will. And for this asset portfolio, you want to have a trust. And you sit down with an estate planner. We don't do this ourselves. We have estate planners that we work with who literally go through everything with you and ask you, what would you like to happen? How long should the portfolio be held? Under which circumstances can properties be sold? Who should be, you know, number 1, number 2, number 3 beneficiary, or how should they determine who should run the trust? That's also why I always make sure that the way we structure things for our clients does not require a whole lot of work for them. You can run like my Series LLC structure, including the trust on top of it. I spend about between 1.5 and 2 hours a month on it. But so it's not a huge time sink or anything like that. If the structure exists, you have everything running, you have all the different pieces properly outsourced, then you're really, and I always literally say this, you're king or queen of your empire, and that's how you should run it. They report to you and you pay for them, you know.
And you, Ideal Wealth Growers actually does this for investors, as well as teaches investors this and many other things in depth, correct?
Correct. We do the series structure. We literally take them by the hand, go through the process of establishing the LLCs and establishing all that stuff. The only thing we don't do in this corporate structuring thing is the actual family trust setup, because we are not lawyers and it's a little individual for everybody. But everything else that we discussed, we do. And then also we actually, in a similar way, when somebody, if you were to say to me, I want to invest in Memphis, Tennessee, then you would get access to my network of all the connections for insurance people, property management people, turnkey providers, all the people who have what you need to actually own and run an asset like that, or a portfolio of assets. That's what's the other part. I mentioned when we started, we have basically 2 parts. The one is the investing part and the other one is the corporate protection part. And we do both of those things until somebody's portfolio gets to a size where you have to say, okay, now some estate planning lawyer type person should get into this and make sure that the whole package is like completely protected.
Awesome. Well, listen, Axel, I appreciate you being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Bumping up against time a little bit. Tell people how they get a hold of you if they want to get some more detail, get into depth, maybe even take this journey with you.
Yeah, so the easiest is to go to idealwealthgrower.com to the website. And in the top right-hand corner, you see a button that says book a call. And I always like to get to know people first. Let's talk about it, see if what we do is a good fit for you. And if it is, then we get going.
Awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here this morning. I'm going to ask you just to hang around for a little bit. I'm going to say goodbye to our listeners, and you and I'll chat for a minute after that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Axel. Hey, everybody. That was a great episode this morning with Axel, and talking about corporate structure and how do we structure our assets, whether they're single family residential or larger multi-family deals, and what's the best course of action and the best place to be. I encourage you to reach out to him and, get a little bit more information and see if there's a fit there for you at all in what they might be able to do to help you with your structure. Want to thank you for being here. Remember, we're here every Saturday morning, Multifamily Unplugged. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you feel that you know somebody who'd be a great guest on the show, let us know. And also want to remind you, coming up in October is our 6th annual virtual multifamily summit. 2 days, 20 speakers and panelists. It'll be action-packed from 9 to 5 both days. We're going to run through working lunches and a lot of giveaways, a lot of gifts that you're going to get, but be there. If you're a new multifamily investor, or if you're somebody who's been in the business and you're scaling, trying to figure out your footing in this economic environment we're in right now, this is a place you'll want to be. It's October 16th and 17th. Here's what I tell people is block those 2 days out of your calendar. A lot of times things come up. You might not be able to be at the entire event, but block those 2 days out and participate. We have some big name speakers this year. Hunter Thompson will be on, Brad Sumrock will be on, a host of others that will be bringing information to you and just giving you the gift of knowledge, the gift of mindset and encouragement to help you go to the next level. Thanks for being here. Again, reach out if there's anything that I can do for you, if you have questions and I can help in any way. Have a great week, everyone.